There we go. Okay, well, I'm sure people will continue to join in the next few minutes as they come in. But for now, we can go ahead and start as I admit Stacy again. Um, Before we start anything though, I'm just gonna go ahead and remind everyone, welcome everyone for being here. Remind everyone that this is a part of our University Center series that feeds into our Entrepreneurial Capabilities Certificate Program. Of course, as many people know, that program can be useful for securing investments, particularly with investments from investors at the New Mexico Rainforest. And all you have to do to get the certificate is complete 7 associated webinars, which this will be one of once we post it on the website, and their associated quizzes. So I'm going to go ahead and put the link to that webpage in the chat right now. And feel free to message me throughout the webinar or email me. My name is on the flyer that went out and my email if you have any questions. But for now, I'm just going to turn things over to Beverly and the other Toastmasters.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matthew Salcido. And I'm going to hand it over to the Toastmaster of today, who is Dick Williams. Dick.
Thank you both very much. And we're going to do a little bit different than an average Toastmaster meeting, and where we're going to start with the speech and then move into the rest of the program. But first, I see Michael Miller is here. And Michael, I would like everyone to drop a private message to Michael and give him one interesting, unique, fun fact about yourself. Something that is, interesting, fun, maybe a little lighthearted. And we'll use those later on in the program.
Pardon me, Dick. Those should be private, folks. To me.
Yes, a private message to Michael.
Not to everybody.
I'll give everyone 30 seconds to think about that.
And Toastmasters, if you will, also, please.
That seems like enough time, so I'm going to introduce our speaker for the day. Trained as a mechanical engineer at MIT, Beverly Williams is currently a tutor of math, science, and music. She educates neurodiverse and neurotypical children using music and movement under the name the Brainiac Baroness. She's been a Toastmaster since June of 2016. Beverly has won several Toastmaster speech contests and mentored many speech-winning contestants. This afternoon, Beverly will be teaching you how to go from having an idea to knowing how to confidently pitch your idea in multiple contexts. We'll start the program by hearing her presentation. We'll follow that with a short session that shows how Toastmasters helps people refine and improve their speeches. For more on Beverly and Toastmasters, I'm going to drop a couple links into the chat right now. And once that is, there's the correct answer key. And now please welcome Beverly Williams with Idea, Paper, Pitch.
Thank you so much, Mr. Toastmaster. Idea, paper, pitch. Wow, what are the problems that most people have when they are ready to give their pitch? Is it true that perhaps we are too close to our product to pitch well? And maybe we are afraid to speak. We will deal with both of those issues as well as dealing with the solutions. Simplify, practice, and control the question and answer period. let's review again. Oh, the last one, smile. Reviewing the problem. You have had years alone with your idea or research or project. Wow, perhaps too many years alone with this. I've been there, folks. I was in the basement of MIT with many, many people doing their research projects while I was doing my research project. And we could chat together about these things, but nobody outside of that basement would know what we were saying. And of course, we would write papers about it, and they were brilliant papers. They were published. Oh, so wonderful. We had been in bed so long with that idea that pretty much what we say is unintelligible to the rest of the world. How many people feel like this is the case? Perhaps you. Additionally, now we have to present this to investors. Yikes. There are a few points I want to get out of the way right away. Do not read your paper, and do not read the abstract from your paper, because they are written in language that most people cannot understand. Because speaking is very different from writing. Speaking is not reading a technical paper. Instead, what should you do? Keep it simple. You want to start your pitch with an executive summary. So if somebody can only hear the first minute of your pitch, they've got the entire idea. It should contain an action point, and all of the words and acronyms in your pitch should be defined. And then it says, I'm supposed to give a story about JAF. JAF is my father. He is an engineer. When he worked as an engineer in the world, he's 90 years old now, so he's been retired for a little while, and now he does YDNA and judges the UNM senior projects. But while he was working as an engineer, he was in charge of new product development for his fine filtration company. He had to present pitches all the time to his investors, what to do. Now, I have to scroll you back in time because he's 90 years old. The Google of that time was called an encyclopedia. Encyclopedias had multiple volumes and took up maybe 2 shelves in your house when houses had bookshelves. Probably your house doesn't even have a bookshelf anymore. Anyway, the encyclopedia was like Google for late high schoolers or college students. It was pretty advanced. We had something else in our house because of my father. We had a junior encyclopedia, and that's like Google for elementary school. After he had researched these ideas and talked with people for months, maybe years, he would scroll back and go to the junior encyclopedia and look up that concept again in the simplest language possible so that he could relate it to people, so that he could give an executive summary and an action point, and so that he remembered that he needed to define the words and acronyms. Many of his ideas became reality. It's his filters, or the filters for the company that he worked for, that ended up on the International Space Station. It's his filters that ended up in all of Disney World. I could go on and on because he was able to keep it simple, make executive summaries, and define his words. Also, now that we are presenting, we need to make sure that our slides don't have too many words, because otherwise people just read your slides and they don't pay attention to your beautiful face, which is smiling. Then you need to repeat your key points in a pitch. Say what you're going to say it, and then say what you said. Most people need concepts repeated over and over again in order for them to sink into their brains. This includes me, you, and your potential investors. And with a strong action point. Do you need $5 million? Be bold and say it. Do you need $5 billion? Say it. Don't make people beg you for the action point. Here's the solution summary. Keep it simple with an executive summary action point, defining words and acronyms, and slides with fewer words. Repeat your key points, say what you will say it, and say what you said, and end with a strong action point. But wow, I just disobeyed my own rule. Here's a simpler summary. Keep it simple. Repeat your key points, end with an action, and smile. I've said that 2 or 3 times now. Why should you smile? Does anybody know? Can somebody put in the chat why you should smile? Why smile? Answer in the chat or yell it out and unmute yourself. Why should you smile?
It builds rapport.
Builds rapport, I heard. What else?
It creates connection with your audience.
Creates connection with your audience. Anything else?
It makes people happy.
Yes, it makes people happy. It makes me happy when I smile, believe it or not, and it makes everybody else happy. Something else. Anything else?
Enthusiastic about your products.
It shows you're enthusiastic about your product. Yes.
And I find that it relaxes me to a certain extent if I smile.
Yes. It makes you more relaxed and able to give your presentation. These are great reasons. How difficult is it to smile when you are scared? It's hard. And we'll get to that because smiling during your presentation takes practice. But all of those reasons are really important. They've done so many studies on smiling and how smiling also makes investors more likely to spend money. And that's what you want. But what if what you say is still unintelligible or is still intelligible only to you? What are you going to do? We have all kinds of solutions, practice with different audiences, and perhaps join Toastmasters. Why? It helps you give your presentation to different audiences. It helps remind you that public speaking is a learnable skill. Anyone can learn to speak. You just have to do it. You get helpful evaluations, and you'll hear an example of one today. Then you can also set it up so that you can gain practice to handle the random questions that might be shot at you at the end of your pitch, which might send some of you over the edge of total fright. Another time for you to participate. Are you not convinced that practicing will help? How many of you exercise? Raise your hand or say yes in the chat. We'll do a count. And then I'd like you to tell me why you exercise. Why do you exercise? You could yell it out.
Feels good.
Feels good. Why else?
For the health benefit.
Health benefit. Why else?
Keeps me sane with my children.
Ooh, keeps you sane with your children. Yes. Why else?
Stress relief.
Stress relief. Yes. These are all really, really good reasons to exercise. Anyone else?
I'm still here.
I'm still here. The way to overcome your fear of speaking is to exercise your speaking muscle. We have to exercise speaking in order to become more comfortable with speaking, and in order for it to not seem like so much effort. We do it at Toastmasters, but wait, it helps you be prepared for different audiences. There are so many different clubs in Albuquerque or in the world. You could prepare for any kind of audience you want. You want a highly technical audience? You can find one. You want an audience that is more like perhaps your investors who don't quite know what's going on? You could get that. You want an audience that helps you with your entire pitch without worrying about the technical aspects? You can get that. Also, it helps you prepare for different amount of times to present. How many of you think, oh, I've got an hour to give my pitch presentation, and you prepare for an hour and the investors get on 45 minutes after it was supposed to begin and they have only 15 minutes. Now you better have a 15-minute preparation or presentation prepared, so that you can present in 15 minutes. It's actually good if you prepare a 1-minute presentation and a 3-minute presentation and a 5-minute presentation and a 15-minute presentation and a 55-minute presentation, so that you're prepared for anything and you're not caught off guard. Toastmasters allows you to set up times where you can answer spontaneous questions. Spontaneous questions, actually, you can feed the questions into people and prepare your answers mostly in advance, and then practice giving those answers. You can almost anticipate any question that you can get. It'll make you so much more comfortable for your question and answer period. All of these things can be done at Toastmasters. Here are some extra pointers. Who is going to call you to the stage or to start your presentation? You need to know, and you need to write and give them your intro. You want to be in control of as many aspects of this presentation as possible. Don't leave your introduction up to chance. Write it out in advance and give it to them. And then figure out what is going to happen at the end of your presentation. Are you going to do a question and answer period? It's a pretty great idea to do a question and answer period at the end of your pitch. But you have to stay in control. And the way to stay in control is to limit the time of the question and answer period and keep your answer simple. But you say, imagine somebody asked me a question that I need to give a very complicated answer to. That might happen. You can give them more information via email, or you can also create an in-depth YouTube presentation that contains all of the really difficult equations, references that you might need. Then you can keep everything simple and they can get the depth they want, either via email or via an in-depth YouTube presentation. The most important aspect of a Q&A is to take control at the end before you're out of time. So if you have a 45-minute presentation and you talk for half an hour and then have a 10-minute question and answer, and take those last 5 minutes so that you are leaving your audience with exactly what you want them to remember. Your summary, your key action points. Often questions are so off the rails. You do not want anyone to remember those off the rails questions. But if you take control at the end, then you're leaving everyone with exactly the information you want them to have. With that in mind, are there any questions?
Are we going to receive a copy of your PowerPoint?
It will be in the recording that will be on the website. You might put that again in the chat, Matthew.
Mhm. But yes, Carla, just so you know, the slides will also be alongside the recording as well.
Thank you.
They will miss this beautiful face, though. There are only half slides. Other questions? Oh, do we have some in the chat, Dick?
I have a
Not really.
question. I'm
Go ahead.
sorry. I have a question real quick. So how long, say we are meeting investors, so how long should our presentation be? A maximum of what, a minimum of what?
That is a really good question. You have to talk to your investors and figure out how they are feeling about it. I would try to keep it on the shorter side, to keep it simple and help them to get more detail in other ways. Better to keep it short and punchy. I'm actually going to hand this over to Stacy. Stacy, do you have any ideas about how long you think a presentation should be? Oh, you're on mute there.
Can you hear me?
Now, yes.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know Matt might even talk about it, but the Rainforest and several groups here in town, ABQID, they all have pitch competitions where you're practicing for giving an actual pitch to some investors. And those are usually, oh my gosh, 3 to 6 minutes, which is kind of a standard Toastmaster speech, right? 3 to 5 or 4 to 6. So they're pretty quick, and usually the format you usually use is 1 slide equals about a minute. You probably have that rule of thumb in your speeches. So 6 minutes, well, 6 slides. So you're going to go through what's my business, what's the problem I'm solving, what product, or I'm sorry, what is the problem I'm solving, what kind of money am I going to make? It sounds like Shark Tank class TV show, which those are all pretty short. So that's probably a good way to think about it. But if you go to New Mexico Angels or New Mexico Startup Factory or any of the places where there's real money in the room, money people, they're going to let you know way up front how much time you have on stage, because they're going to try and get through 3 or 4 of these in an hour. So just like a Toastmasters meeting, you've got to, and I practice it, like you said, to give it to that exact many minutes. So, because you can go short, but you're leaving some extra time on the table, but you certainly don't want to go 10 minutes and they're like trying to hook you off the stage. That's not good. But yeah, you might, I think Matt also has some of those other webinars that are about pitches. So specifically for that environment, I think those actually go into how many minutes each pitch was, but they're short.
Yeah, Carla, the best rule of thumb is to try and talk for as long as you absolutely need to and not any longer. You really want to make your pitch as lean as possible. Michael, I think you were going to say something.
I was. Thank you very much, Matthew. I've just pitched a movie project in Hollywood, in Los Angeles. They gave me 2 minutes.
Oh my God.
2 minutes.
2 minutes for the pitch. And if they want to have more information, they'll keep you on talking. But you've got 2 minutes to present your case.
One
That's
of
all I
the,
need.
Michael, that's brilliant. And it's so good to be able to say your pitch with that succinctness. It's nice to have a long pitch, but that's what all of us at Toastmasters are in the business to help you do, is to focus and distill your pitch down to just what it needs to be to get the point across.
So I would like to comment just real quick. So Stacy mentioned
New Mexico Startup Factory. I'm the vice president of New Mexico Startup Factory.
Oh, yeah,
And I did
yeah.
a lot of work with people going after equity investments and know your audience. So like you said before, you should have about 3 or 4 different versions of your pitch prepared. And, you know, technical slides and stuff could be very, very convincing for one set of audience, but not for another one. So you should have at least 3 to 4 pitch decks ready and be ready to talk about it in a quick manner, just like what you guys said. So I completely agree with everything. This is great. Awesome.
Andrea, thank you so much. That is brilliant. Know your audience and have a different slide deck for a technical audience or for audiences that aren't as technical. It's so necessary.
And people forget about the strategic partners too. So you're not just going after equity investment. You're not just going after people to give you money. You're also going to talk to people to support you and help your technology, help your business move forward. So that's why I just wanted to say that. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Can I ask her a question? Andrea, and I didn't see you on there. I would have pointed to you because I know you are the vice president of that organization. Do you guys give people a set amount of time or a set amount of slides to give?
No, so usually it depends. Like I said, know your audience. Maximum amount of slides that we usually like is about 12.
Okay.
Depending. And I mean, that's within like 12 on the guts of it. So you have your intro, you have your exit. So 15 max is what I would say personally. Just going off of what I've experienced with New Mexico Startup Factory, New Mexico Angels. After that, people start to, you know, they don't pay attention as much as they normally would when you have too much information in there. For a strategic partner thing, I think it would vary between 8 and 10 is what I would guess. And that's what we've done. Yeah, that's what we've done in the past.
And I'm done. One last question, Michael, what did you include in 2 minutes? Oh my God, you crazy guy. I can't imagine that.
Right.
Production, name of the company, the title of the movie, little short tagline about the movie, what the investment was going to pay them at the end. Boom. They either like it or they don't.
Wow.
Vic, I think there's a question in the chat, isn't there?
Yes, there is, from Jonathan Gardner. And Jonathan wants to know, can you tell us about a time when you pitched an idea using these question and answer techniques?
I'm going to hand that to the audience because I think that the audience might be able to answer that better. It's always better to take control at the end. If you have opportunities, and I say to Stacy and Andrea, do they have question and answer? Do they recommend it or do they not recommend it?
Oh, Q&A is huge. We love Q&A. So
Yeah.
always end. So number one, end with Q&A slide and then contact information. Because believe it or not, so many people do not include their phone numbers or emails or anything like that on the presentation. And you kind of need that for follow-up.
Right.
So the only thing I'd add to that is I taught a Shark Tank class at UNM Anderson School of Management for the last 5 years. I'm retired this last year, but for my students, I went through, oh my God, probably 50 or 35 Shark Tank shows. And then I bought 2 or 3 of their books. And then I made up a list of about 30 questions you might get asked. So, and then, you know, it's the typical stuff. Have you sold anything? What did it cost? What do you sell it for, et cetera? So you know what I'll do, Elizabeth? I'll send you that list of those 30 questions. Now, you don't get asked maybe 3 of them, but you should be prepared to answer them, or at least have some sense of that, which is kind of, I think, what you're pointing to is be prepared or think through the end result of what you're presenting, what might happen in that presentation that you should be prepared for.
Yes, thank you so much, Stacy. Jenny, I'll take your comment question as the last one.
My thought where I have used this is demoing Toastmaster clubs. For a while, I spent some time in district leadership and we would do demo meetings. And there's a lot of question and answers, like what is Toastmasters all about? And it's on my brain because there's a lot of Toastmasters here. So forgive me for it not being something I'm going to make a lot of money at. However, a few of them have been successful, and we've started new clubs and gotten more people in the state of New Mexico and the Panhandle of Texas to work on their leadership and communication skills. Beverly?
Thank you so much. What a great segue, Jenny. Let's review what the problems are. That perhaps what you have to say is unintelligible, or perhaps you're scared to speak. And the solutions? Keep it simple, repeat your key points and with a strong action point, practice with different audiences and times, and join Toastmasters to practice your presentation and impromptu questions. Oh, but wait. That slide was too wordy. You all agree? That was the mistake I just made. Let's simplify it. We want to simplify your presentation. Practice, practice, practice. Control the Q&A by ending with you speaking and the final points. And remember to smile, because the best way to overcome your fear of speaking is by exercising your speaking muscle at a place like Toastmasters. Mr. Toastmaster, I hand the meeting over to you.
And thank you very much. For the remainder of this meeting today, we're going to go through the outlines of a basic Toastmaster meeting, minus the speech, since we've heard the speech. So I am going to review what we'll go over, or preview what we will go over in the next half hour. And then we'll go through it. We're going to have what Toastmasters calls table topics, which is impromptu speaking. And Michael Miller is going to run that. And Michael will be asking people questions based upon the little tidbit that you dropped into the private chat. Then we're going to have an evaluation portion of the meeting, which is the real strength of a Toastmasters meeting. And Stephen Chavarria is going to be the general evaluator, and Jonathan Gardner is going to evaluate Beverly's speech right after she gave it, so that she will get instant feedback on what she did. Jenny Zappone has been listening for grammar, both good and bad, and mistakes in the way that we have all been speaking. And then Steve will give us a general evaluation of this presentation and meeting as a whole. So with that as our roadmap going ahead, Michael Miller.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. I've got some interesting answers to something special about you, something unique about you. And I'm going to start with a couple of them that might be a little bit off the wall. I have a perfect record in tractor pull combinations 0 to 1. Who wrote that? Jonathan, please tell us a little about that.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. It came when I was at a much younger and tenderer age. My grandfather was a farmer. And when I went to visit him when I was about 10 years old or so, we ended up someplace in farming Nebraska at a county fair type event. And one of the things they had at this place was a tractor pull competition. And they would hitch up, basically, if you think of a tricycle and a tractor getting married and having a child, That was the piece of equipment they put us kids on. And the idea was to pedal as hard as you could and go as far as you can with whatever load they had put on this particular thing. And somehow I got entered in the appropriate category for my age group. I was not raised on a farm. I was raised in the suburbs. I did not get that far in that competition, but at 0-1, I have a perfect record.
Thank you, Jonathan. Some of the others are not quite that different. I have a pretty eclectic background, and so I can identify with a number of the folks here today. I too was in television. I don't know what my biggest audience was, but one of the people here had an audience of 3.5 million. That would be who? Steve?
That would be me, Mr. Table Topic Master. And actually, there's a correction. It was 3.5 billion with a B. And I had the fortunate experience of being able to perform at the opening ceremonies of the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles. I performed as a musician with the Olympic All-American Marching Band, and it was exciting. Spent the time leading up to the Olympics, preparing and getting ready for that, and practicing and playing different venues during the 2 weeks of the Olympic game, and then playing at the closing ceremony as well. So, but 3.5 billion people is not all that many people when you're on the outside of the camera looking in, but it was a lot of fun nonetheless.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's always a guessing game, how many people are really out there. One of the things that I like particularly about Toastmasters is that when we are doing meetings like this that are hybrid or virtual meetings, we have no idea who actually is out there listening to us. And it gives you the opportunity to practice that without having to concentrate on how many people are in the audience to make your knees shake, like mine did this weekend. Somebody was with a group of people that I wanted to join when I was in high school. That was during the McCarthy era, for those of you old enough to remember that. My father thought that this organization was a front for a Communist Party group. And so I was not allowed to sing. Who would that be? Up with people.
Yeah, that was me, Stacy. Although, you know, everybody thought it was either communist or I've heard so many different stories of a cult, but really initially it was a religious group, and then they went away from the religious side of it, and they were all American, and then they went international. So they were like more a mini United Nations. But yeah, and I was supposed to perform in the Super Bowl.
Stacy muted.
Oh, am I
Nope.
muted?
Nope, we can hear you.
Okay.
I was supposed to perform in the Super Bowl halftime show. And the guy when I would dance, and the guy standing next to me was Beyonce's uncle. So I got to meet her at his wedding, which was fun. But she was just a kid. I'm that old, like you. The McCarthy era, that cracked me up.
All right, thank you very much, Stacy. One of the things that I want to say is I'm asking people who are not yet Toastmasters, there is something you can say if I ask you a question and you don't want to answer it, and that is simply pass. We don't require any non-Toastmasters to answer any of these questions, but we think it's kind of fun to get to know each other, particularly if maybe we're going to work together a little bit more. One of the people in this audience swam with sea turtles. Nahoma,
That
could you
would
tell
be
us about
me.
that, please?
Yeah, so in 2019, I went to Waikiki with my mom and my sister. And my sister and I were swimming in the ocean, even though I was terrified. And she turned around and looked at me and she said, "Look to your right." And just then I heard the water like move different because it was a still day. And there was a huge sea turtle that just looked at me, and I looked at him or her, and I turned around and went back to the beach because I was terrified. and I didn't want to be in the ocean anymore after that.
Thank you very much. Quite an experience. I don't think I would be with the Turtles. I'll just, other musical groups, yes, but not the Turtles. Anybody here old enough to remember the Turtles? Okay, there goes my age again. Somebody had a hip replacement just recently. Charlie, would you tell us a little bit about that, please? Or not Charlie? Yes, Charlie. I'm still seeing two Charlies.
It is. You know what? I've got a bad echo going here. I don't know. Can you guys hear me okay?
Mute one of them.
Yeah, I've got the other one muted. Anyway, yes, I was just recently a recipient of a right hip replacement. It is one of the wonders of modern medicine. I'm thrilled. It's the old pain is actually completely gone that I was living with for about a year and a half. And I'm on the mends and already walking with the walker and all that good stuff. But it really is, if anybody ever is considering that operation, it's fantastic. I couldn't be more pleased. And I managed my family's ranch up above Las Vegas, New Mexico. And it's been a rough couple of years, but a rough couple of years in general. We were victims of the Hermit's Peak, Cap Canyon fire and all that kind of stuff. But so pleased about being back and on the mend, and it really is one of the wonders of modern medicine.
Very good. Thank you. My wife is going to have a shoulder replacement, so I had to ask you about that.
That's more difficult.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. We are running out of time if we're going to do the evaluations. I'm going to ask one more question. Beverly, how do you get to Carnegie Hall?
How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice.
Thank you very much. We've appreciated your participation. Now, how many of you felt scared about asking that? Toastmasters, do not answer that. All right. It's an idea to give you an opportunity to speak off the cuff about you. There's an interesting way to do it. If you can keep that in mind when you are ever put in the position of answering anything off the cuff, there's no fear necessary in that. You've just proved that. Okay, back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Michael Miller. Now I would like to introduce Stephen and let him run the evaluation portion of our meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our most welcome guests today. I am the general evaluator. My name is Steve Chavira, and my home club is Jean's Jesters Club. We meet Tuesday mornings, 7 a.m. virtually, and we are chartered in Las Cruces, New Mexico. So thank you for taking the time to be with us today. A typical Toastmasters meeting has three portions of the meeting, where one is the speaker that we heard from Beverly. We have the table topics where people get the chance to speak off the cuff in an impromptu fashion for up to 2 minutes. And then we have the evaluation. As the general evaluator, I will be walking through and asking functionaries there to give a brief report on the meeting, and we'll be sharing that so that you have an idea of how Toastmasters goes. So thank you for paying attention and listening to this, and it's been a great meeting so far. But the evaluation is always something that, one, the speaker gets to hear a strong evaluation, and it's a valuable part of the meeting and part of a Toastmaster's life. But it is important, and it's always delivered with compassion. And there is none other who has more compassion than anybody I've seen so far. But I think Jonathan Gardner is going to tell us show us what a great evaluation is and deliver it very, very well. So please welcome Jonathan Gardner to the evaluation stage.
Well, thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, for those very kind words. And everyone in the meeting, but especially Beverly, a couple of points I'd like to bring out. The theme that I saw from an evaluator's perspective from this presentation is what I would call show and tell. And let me tell you why that was the theme that I observed, that you were both telling us how to do things and you were showing us how to do things. And in an incredible display of courage, when it came to the question and answer portion, you told us how to conduct a Q&A session, and then you proceeded immediately to put yourself on the spot and show us how to do that. So thank you for both telling and showing us how to run a Q&A session through this presentation that's very much in the style of a keynote speech. It's a little bit longer than the typical 5 to 7 Toastmasters presentation. A couple of things I noticed that I would challenge if you ever use this presentation to show and tell, either in this context or possibly in a different context. One, I love the JFA story. I would like to hear more stories. With the JFA story, you were able to show us a concept in action, and I would like to see more of that showing with a couple other stories or vignettes in the speech to demonstrate the points that you're giving us. You've got great information. I think it'd be a little stickier and stay with us a little bit better with a little more story to have that idea come across and stay with us once we go our ways from the presentation. Another thing that I noticed, you have a lot of hand gestures in the presentation. To me, on my screen, they seem to be a bit near the bottom of the screen, so I was missing some of the hand gesturing. So I'd encourage you to raise your hands a couple of inches within an online context so we can get the full impact of those gestures contributing to the speech within the Zoom frame. Speaking of the Zoom frame, you did something that I may have never seen before. If I have, I haven't seen it often, and I just love it. And that's the layout of your slides today. Because you have got, as you put it, half slides. Half of your slide is the text that you're communicating with us, and the visuals, love the pictures, by the way. Half of your slide is your content of the slide itself, and then the other half is you. And that is brilliant and beautiful within this context. How many times during the course of the last couple of years have we had someone trying to share their screen and give us a presentation and then themselves in 2 windows on a Zoom meeting? And we have had how many technical issues as people have tried to do that? And you solved that problem by putting everything in a single frame for us. Wow, that also helped you to follow your own advice in keeping the content on the slides down so that it was easier for us to process, as you encouraged us to do. So thank you so much, Beverly, for this great information and both showing and telling us how we can be better pitchers. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Jonathan. Absolutely. Some great points for Beverly to live by and to improve her speech for the next time she delivers it. Now, as part of the Toastmasters meeting, there are other things that we pay attention to. We did not have a timer function running for this meeting, but we would typically have a timer that would keep us within certain time periods for each portion of the meeting. And those are very important because one of the main tenets of Toastmasters is that the meeting will always start on time and end on time. We know that time is a factor and getting people to the meeting is important, so let them get back to their jobs. But one of the main functionaries that we had today was our grammarian. And it's always nice to be able to hear the flowery uses of the American language, to use the crutch words and the different ways that we use the American language. And for somebody who does an astute job of paying attention to that, please welcome as our grammarian today, Jenny Zappone.
Thank you, Stephen. Again, my job is to count the uhs, ums, and to catch any grammar, good or bad, that sticks out. I will tell you there are many that are better at the grammar than myself. However, there were a few things I caught today, and I'll give you an idea of the uhs and ums that I heard as well. Beverly, I had 2 things I would consider rephrasing. One was, I'm supposed to give a story. Maybe, let me tell you a story. don't know what you're supposed to really do in life. And you all agree with me. Maybe something like, does everybody agree? To kind of ease the colloquialism there. For us and ums, these are my favorites to count. I will tell you, when I first started Toastmasters, I could not stand to hear myself talk for all the us and ums that I was using. If you find yourself using them and they drive you crazy, you know you are a Toastmaster. Mike, I counted 3 us and 1 okay. Steve, I counted 5 us, 3 ands, and a so. Stacy, I'll pick on you because it seems you're experienced in this matter. I did count an and a so. And Jonathan, I counted 2 us, and I want to compliment you on better pictures. I thought that was a great tie to your evaluation that pulled that all in. Those are my thoughts, what I heard today, and just to keep an eye on those when you give your pitches, because if you're giving them to me, I will send you to Toastmasters. Back to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. Yes. So normally in a Toastmasters meeting, we would also have a word of the day that people would try to incorporate into their table topics responses. We would have a vote for the outstanding table topic presenter of the day, and there would be a lot more to the meeting than we would have. But in a demo meeting, it's important for you all to get to see a well-rounded version of what a meeting is about. I want to say, as a general evaluator, I noticed that the meeting did start on time. There was a lot of good banter and exchange going forth, sort of getting the day ready before the meeting began. I thought that as a demo meeting, it's also important that we set the stage properly for those who have not been to a Toastmasters meeting before. So I would have liked to have seen us maybe do what is standard in a Toastmasters meeting, is to have each functionary or role player describe their duty for the day. What that does is that lets non-Toastmasters understand why we are having a timer, a grammarian, and so forth. And it sets the stage in a more direct way for people to see what's going to be happening. And so I would have liked to have seen that happen. Overall, we had a strong presentation today. It was a little out of order, which is fine. And Dick did present that a little bit to tell us that it was going to be out of order. So that was good. But Beverly, your presentation was great. I would like to have seen during the JFA speech, I know you said it was your father, but I would love to have just had you tell us what JFA stood for. One, so we could know what his name was and properly give him the credit that he deserves. But I thank you for that. I agree with Jonathan's take on the hand gestures. Your gestures were kind of barely making it up to the surface of the stage or the screen. And so it was a little bit distracting. And if you notice, if you're looking at the screen right now, Jonathan is standing and he's a little bit further back from the camera, so he could raise his hands easily. You're a little bit closer, but with your background screen, you're limited to how far back you can get. So think about that in the next delivery of your space. I want to say that I believe, as a Toastmaster purist, and I've been a member since before the turn of the century, Toastmasters, to me, if it happens in a Toastmasters meeting, we plan for that was supposed to be the way that it worked. So when Charlie Painter, when you gave your speech and started giving the feedback, what I would have done is gone right into the Lou Gehrig speech and just gone for it. And I thought it would have worked out very, very well. But you did a great job on your presentation. I think everybody did well. I hope that you will take a moment, please, to send your feedback to Matthew Salcido, who is our convener for today, but also to Beverly Williams. Tell her what you thought about Toastmasters. Tell her what you thought about this meeting, and make sure that if you have an opportunity to check out the meetings that are out there, the Toastmasters opportunities that are available, make sure you consider Jean's Jesters Tuesday morning, 7 a.m. Reach out to me. I would love to have you in our club. And with that, I will turn the meeting back over to our Toastmaster.
Thank you, Steve. I'm going to drop into the chat one more time some contact information for Beverly and a couple more links about a speech of Beverly's about why Toastmasters, why you should do this. And there's a link on how to find a club in Toastmasters if you're interested. And there's also, Beverly has a couple dozen speeches up there if you like a variety. So you can see more of her Toastmasters speeches up there as well. Are there any questions about Toastmasters from anyone here?
How much does it cost to join Toastmasters?
Toastmasters is typically $45 for a 6-month commitment. So annually $90. Your club might have a small fee for their local operating expenses if they have to rent space at a community center or whatever. But $45 for 6 months to learn how to speak better is a bargain.
Can I write off my Toastmasters membership as a business expense?
If your business is speaking, yeah.
Or personal development?
I'm not a tax professional, so I will not answer that question.
Okay.
But
I have a
yes,
question. Can we have the information for Andrea's group as well?
yes, Andrea, if you would like to enter into the chat a site for your a website and contact information, please go ahead.
It looks like Andrea left the meeting, unfortunately, but yeah, I get in contact with her probably through her email. It's probably on their website, Carla.
And the name of it is what again?
It's New
factory?
Mexico Startup Factory. You know what? I publish a website, NM Netlinks, with 3,400 links, everything going on in the state, including the New Mexico entrepreneurial ecosystem, which is under I'll put it in the chat, but that has all of the funders in there. There's about 25. So that includes New Mexico Startup Factory. So that's a pretty rich set of data. And then as far as the writing that off on your taxes, I used to be the public information officer for District 23. And I wrote an article for the Albuquerque Journal on why you should bring a club into your company. And I think I addressed that issue in there. I'm going to go find that article and send it over to Beverly too. So, but I think you're right, Dick. If you're a professional speaker, you should be able to write it off for that. The question is if it's personal development. I don't know how you do that.
It's typically done at the beginning of the year when you submit a personal development plan for your career field and the course that you plan to take. And if you put it into the budget early enough, most companies will be able to reimburse that.
That would make sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Point of order, Mr.
But I'm
Toastmaster.
trying to pay more taxes. What's the deal? No, I'm just kidding.
Point of order, Mr. Toastmaster. We are now a minute over our time.
Yes, we are. And I was just about to mention that and thank everyone for joining today. That will conclude our meeting. Thank you all for attending.
And feel free to email me with any questions. And even if you have questions for other people, I know only my email was in there. I can get them to whomever you wish them to go to. So if you have a question for someone else, I can pass it on. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking to you all. And thank you for participating, all you Toastmasters, and thank you for having us, Matthew Salcido.
All right. Thank you all Toastmasters for coming. Thank you to all the participants. Feel free to email me if you have any questions about our other upcoming webinars. But for now, I'll go ahead and say see you later, and I'll end the meeting now. Goodbye.
Thanks so much, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew.